The phone vibrated against the wooden nightstand, its screen illuminating the darkened bedroom with an eerie blue glow. I rolled over, squinting at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Who would call at this hour? My hand fumbled for the device, and as I brought it to my face, the air left my lungs in a single, painful rush. Michael calling, the screen read. My brother Michael, my brother who had died 5 years ago. The phone continued to vibrate in my trembling hand, the name flashing like an accusation. It wasn't possible. I had deleted his contact after the funeral, unable to bear seeing his name in my phone anymore. Yet here it was, complete with the photo I'd assigned to him. Michael grinning on his boat, sunglasses pushed up on his head, the lake stretching behind him. Against every rational instinct, I answered. Hello? My voice cracked. Silence greeted me, then a soft static, like wind brushing against a microphone. I was about to hang up when I heard it. Faint, but unmistakable. James? The voice was distorted, distant, but I recognized it instantly. My brother's voice. James, I need your help. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who is this? I demanded, sitting upright. This isn't funny. It's me, the voice said. I don't have much time. Meet me where we used to fish. Tomorrow. Sunrise. The connection crackled. Come alone. The line went dead. I sat motionless in the dark, the phone still pressed to my ear. This was impossible. Michael had died in a car accident 5 years ago. I'd identified his body. I'd watched them lower his casket into the ground. I'd mourned him every day since. With shaking hands, I called the number back. The automated voice informed me that the number was no longer in service. I tried again with the same result. Sleep was out of the question. I paced my apartment until dawn, my mind racing between rational explanations, a cruel prank, a technical glitch, my own exhausted imagination, and the impossible alternative that somehow my dead brother had reached out from beyond the grave. As the first gray light of morning filtered through my blinds, I made my decision. I would go to the lake. I had to know. The lake had been our sanctuary growing up. 2 hours from the city, nestled in the mountains, it was where Dad had taught us to fish, where we'd spent countless summer weekends, and where we'd scattered our parents' ashes after the accident that took them both when I was 22 and Michael 25. After that, it became our place, just the two of us, carrying on the tradition, processing our grief together on that weathered dock. I hadn't been back since Michael died. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the small parking area. The lake was deserted this early, mist hovering over the still water like a dream. The familiar path to our fishing spot was overgrown now, nature reclaiming what we had abandoned. As I approached the dock, memories flooded back. Michael, teaching me to tie fishing knots, our competitions to catch the biggest bass, the deep conversations we'd have waiting for the fish to bite. The last time we'd been here together was 2 weeks before his accident. We'd talked about his upcoming wedding to Sarah, how he was nervous but certain, how he hoped to bring his children here someday, children who would never exist now. The dock creaked under my weight, the sound echoing across the water. I stood at the edge, looking out at the misty lake, waiting for… what? A ghost? A cruel prankster? The sun was just beginning to peek over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I knew you'd come. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my footing. At the shore end of the dock stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face partially shadowed by a baseball cap. My heart stopped. "Michael?" I whispered. He stepped forward, and the rising sun illuminated his features. Not Michael. Similar build, similar stance, but definitely not my brother. Relief and disappointment crashed through me simultaneously. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Did you call me last night?" The man removed his cap, revealing a face perhaps 10 years older than mine, weathered by sun and time. "My name is Robert Caldwell, and no, I didn't call you, but I knew someone would." "What the hell does that mean?" I took a step back, suddenly aware of how isolated we were. "I've been watching this spot for 3 weeks," he said, his voice steady. "Waiting for someone to show up looking confused and scared just like you." He reached into his pocket, and I tensed, but he only pulled out a phone. An old flip phone, the kind nobody used anymore. Let me guess, he continued. You got a call from someone you know is dead. They asked you to come here. Their voice sounded just like you remembered. The blood drained from my face. How could you possibly know that? Robert's eyes, gray and tired, held mine. Because the same thing happened to me. My wife, Elaine. She's been gone 8 years. He gestured to the phone in his hand. 2 months ago, she called me, asked me to meet her at our favorite restaurant. I stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. This is insane. I thought so too. He nodded. Then I found others. 7 of us now, all with the same story. A call from a dead loved one, asking to meet somewhere meaningful. He paused. None of them ever showed up, but something else did. A chill ran down my spine despite the warming morning air. What do you mean, something else? Robert looked past me, out at the lake. We should talk somewhere else. This isn't safe. He turned to leave. Follow me if you want answers, or go home and try to forget this happened, but I promise you, they'll call again. I stood frozen, watching him walk back up the path toward the parking lot. Every rational thought told me to leave, to dismiss this as the ramblings of a disturbed man, but the memory of Michael's voice on the phone, so real, so him, compelled me forward. Wait, I called, jogging to catch up. How do I know I can trust you? Robert stopped and turned. You don't, but right now, I'm the only one who believes what you experienced was real. He held out his hand. The choice is yours, James. I hesitated, then shook his hand. How do you know my name? A grim smile crossed his face. Because whoever, or whatever, is behind this wants us to find each other. He nodded toward my car. Follow me. There's a diner about 20 minutes from here. We can talk safely there. As I walked back to my car, I glanced once more at the dock, half expecting to see Michael standing there. The dock was empty, but for a moment, just a moment, I could have sworn I heard his laugh carried on the breeze. The diner was a typical roadside establishment. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, the smell of coffee and bacon permeating the air. We sat in a corner booth, far from the few other early morning patrons. Robert ordered coffee for both of us, and I noticed his hands trembled slightly as he lifted his cup. So, I said after the waitress left, you're telling me that dead people are calling their loved ones on the phone? Robert grimaced. When you say it like that, it sounds crazy. It is crazy. Then why are you here? His eyes challenged me. Why did you go to the lake this morning? I had no good answer. Tell me about these others, the 7 people you mentioned. Robert pulled a small notebook from his jacket and slid it across the table. I opened it to find a list of names, dates, and locations. Maria Vasquez, called by her son who died in Afghanistan. Thomas Chen, called by his father. Amelia Washington, called by her sister. He tapped the page. All of them received calls from numbers their loved ones used when they were alive. All were asked to meet somewhere significant. I scanned the list, a knot forming in my stomach. And none of the dead people showed up? No. Robert's voice lowered. But 4 of the 7 people on that list have disappeared. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Disappeared? Gone without a trace. The others, like me, went to the meeting places but left when their loved ones didn't show. Those who disappeared, he hesitated. We think they encountered something at their meeting spots, something that took them. That's a pretty big leap, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. People go missing all the time. Not within hours of receiving impossible phone calls from the dead. Robert leaned forward. Whatever this is, it's using our grief, our love, to lure us somewhere. It knows exactly what to say, how to sound. It knows things only our loved ones would know. I thought of Michael's voice, the way he'd said my name. You think it's some kind of, what, a supernatural predator? Robert shrugged. I don't know what it is. That's why I've been staking out these meeting places, trying to intercept people before they encounter it. His expression softened. I was too late for some. I'm glad I wasn't too late for you. The waitress returned with plates of eggs and toast neither of us had ordered. We waited until she left before continuing. How did you find these other people? I asked. It started with a support group for grief. Elaine's death. It hit me hard. Robert pushed his food around his plate. After I got the call, I thought I was losing my mind. I mentioned it at group just in passing. Maria was there. She'd gotten her call the week before. We started connecting the dots, finding others through online forums, newspaper reports of missing persons. I pulled out my phone and showed him the call log. The number is disconnected now. I tried calling back immediately. They all are, he nodded. The calls come from the original numbers, but they can't be traced or called back. It's like they exist for just those few minutes. Have you gone to the police? A bitter laugh escaped him. With what? Officer, dead people are making phone calls? The few who didn't dismiss me outright suggested grief counseling. I pushed my untouched plate away. So what now? What do we do with this information? Robert's eyes met mine, deadly serious. We find out what's behind it before more people disappear. And we start by learning everything we can about your brother. The statement caught me off guard. What does Michael have to do with this? Everything. Robert closed his notebook. Whatever this entity is, it chose your brother as its mask. We need to understand why, what connection might exist between Michael and the others who've been used this way. A wave of protectiveness washed over me. My brother was a good man. He doesn't deserve to be dragged into this insanity. I'm not questioning who he was, Robert said gently. But there must be patterns, connections we're not seeing yet. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. This is my number. I'm staying at the Lakeside Motel about 5 miles from here. Room 17. Come by this afternoon if you want to continue this conversation. He stood, leaving money for the untouched breakfast. One more thing, James. Don't tell anyone else about the call. Not yet. We don't know who or what we're dealing with or how far its influence extends. After he left, I sat alone in the booth, staring at his card. Robert Caldwell, electrical engineer. A normal job, a normal life, until his dead wife called him. Just as my normal life had been shattered by Michael's voice on the phone. I paid my share and walked to my car, the weight of Robert's warnings pressing down on me. As I reached for the door handle, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. Unknown. Number. Did you meet him yet, Jamie? Don't trust everything he says. Some secrets should stay buried. M. Only Michael had ever called me Jamie. I drove aimlessly for hours, the text message burning in my mind. The rational part of me insisted this was an elaborate hoax. Someone had accessed Michael's old contacts, learned our childhood nicknames, our special places, perhaps even hired voice actors who could mimic the dead. But for what purpose? To drive me insane? To lure me somewhere dangerous, as Robert suggested? I found myself pulling into the cemetery where Michael was buried. I hadn't visited in months, the pain still too raw even after 5 years. His grave was simple, a granite headstone with his name, dates, and the inscription, beloved brother, friend, and almost husband. Sarah had included that last part, a nod to the wedding that never happened. What's going on, Mike? I whispered, kneeling beside the headstone. Is it really you somehow? Or is something using you to get to me? Only the whisper of wind through the cemetery trees answered me. On impulse, I began digging my fingers into the soil beside the grave, not sure what I was looking for. Some sign, some proof that he was still there, still at rest. The groundskeeper would probably have me removed if spotted, but I didn't care. My fingers struck something hard. Not a root or a stone, but something smooth and metallic. I dug around it, eventually pulling free a small tin box, the kind mints come in. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a key I recognized immediately. The key to Michael's boat shed at the lake. The boat had been sold after his death, but I'd never cleared out the small shed where he'd kept his fishing gear. I unfolded the note. Jamie, if you're reading this, something's happened to me. The shed holds answers. Trust no one until you see for yourself. M. The handwriting was unmistakably Michael's. I sat back on my heels staring at the note. Michael had buried this by his future gravesite? How could he have known where he'd be buried? Unless he'd known he was in danger before his death. The car accident that killed him had been straightforward. A rainy night, a slick road, a tree. There had been no passengers, no other vehicles involved. The police report cited speed and weather conditions. I'd never questioned it. Until now. I pocketed the key and note, filled in the small hole I'd dug, and hurried back to my car. The boat shed suddenly seemed like the most important place in the world, more important than Robert Caldwell and his theories, more important than the mysterious text warning me against him. The drive back to the lake felt eternal. Questions tumbled through my mind. Had Michael suspected something would happen to him? Was his death not an accident? And if not, how was it connected to these calls from beyond the grave? The lake was busier now, a few families picnicking, a couple of boats out on the water. I parked in a different spot than earlier, closer to the row of small sheds where boat owners stored equipment. Michael's was the last one, partially, hidden by overgrown bushes. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if it had been recently used. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dusty space. Fishing rods leaned in one corner, tackle boxes stacked beside them. A workbench ran along one wall, cluttered with lures, line, and tools. Nothing seemed unusual or revealing. What answers had Michael thought were here? I began searching methodically, checking inside tackle boxes, beneath the workbench, behind the rods. In my frustration, I slammed my hand against the wall and heard a hollow sound. Knocking again, I traced the outline of what appeared to be a hidden compartment. My fingers found a nearly invisible seam, and with some effort, I pried open a small door built into the wall. Inside was a waterproof bag containing a laptop, an external hard drive, and a manila envelope. My hands shook as I opened the envelope first. It contained photographs, surveillance photos of people I didn't recognize, handwritten notes, newspaper clippings about disappearances and unexplained deaths spanning decades. One photo made me freeze. It showed Robert Caldwell, unmistakably him, though the picture appeared to be at least 10 years old, standing with a group of people in lab coats outside a building labeled Nexus Research Facility. On the back of the photo, Michael had written, "Project Threshold participants, Caldwell, Jenkins, Mercer, Whitman, playing with fire." I sat heavily on the dusty floor of the shed, the laptop open before me, the hard drive connected. The computer was password protected, but I knew my brother. All his passwords were variations on our childhood dog's name and our parents' anniversary. After 3 attempts, I was in. The files were organized meticulously, as Michael did everything in his life. Folders labeled by date, by name, by location. I clicked on one labeled Caldwell and found more photos, scanned documents, transcribed conversations. Michael had been investigating Robert Caldwell. Not just him, but the entire group from the photograph, all scientists who had worked at Nexus Research, a private facility that had apparently shut down abruptly 8 years ago. According to Michael's notes, they had been working on something called Project Threshold, research into what they termed consciousness transference and cross-dimensional communication. The scientific language was dense, but the implications were clear. They believed they had found a way to communicate with another plane of existence, a plane where the dead might dwell. One document stood out, a formal complaint filed by Robert Caldwell against the project director, citing ethical violations and dangerous protocols. He had quit the project 3 months before the facility closed. 2 weeks after his resignation, his wife Elaine had died in what was ruled a suicide. I was so engrossed in the files that I didn't hear the shed door open. A shadow fell across the laptop screen. "I was hoping I'd find you here," Robert Caldwell said, his voice eerily calm. "I see Michael was more thorough in his investigation than we realized." I scrambled to my feet, backing away until I hit the wall. "Stay back!" Robert raised his hands placatingly. "I'm not here to hurt you, James. I'm here to explain." His eyes fell to the photos spread on the floor. "Though it seems Michael has already started that process for me." "You lied to me," I said, anger rising. "You worked at Nexus. You knew what was happening all along." "I didn't lie." He stepped further into the shed, closing the door behind him. "I just didn't tell you everything, because the truth is harder to believe than the simplified version I gave you." He gestured to the laptop. "May I?" Against my better judgment, I nodded. He sat on the floor, scrolling through the files with the familiarity of someone who knew exactly what they contained. "Your brother was a journalist, wasn't he?" Robert asked, though it clearly wasn't a question. "A good one. He started investigating Nexus after a whistleblower contacted him, probably Jenkins, judging by these files. He looked up at me. What did Michael tell you about his work? Not much, I admitted. He wrote for technology magazines mostly, consumer stuff. He never mentioned anything about investigating research facilities. Robert nodded. He wouldn't have. The work we were doing at Nexus was classified, dangerous. He closed the laptop. And it didn't end when the facility shut down. It escaped. What escaped? I demanded. Stop talking in riddles. Robert's face was grim. We called it the Echo, a consciousness without a body, existing in the space between dimensions. We didn't create it. We just opened a door and it came through. He ran a hand over his face. It feeds on grief, on longing. It finds the connections between the living and the dead and uses them as conduits. That's insane, I whispered. But even as I said it, I thought of Michael's voice on the phone. The Echo can access memories, imitate voices, know things only the dead person would know, Robert continued. It lures people to places of emotional significance, places where the veil between worlds is thinner for them because of their emotional connection. His voice broke slightly. It took my wife first, made her kill herself, then used her to try to take me. I thought of the text message warning me not to trust him. If what you're saying is true, why are you still alive? Why help others? Guilt, he said simply. I helped create this situation, and I discovered that the Echo can't take you unless you fully believe, unless you surrender to the idea that your loved one has somehow returned. His eyes met mine. Those who disappeared? They wanted so badly to believe that they opened themselves completely, became vulnerable. And the others who got away? Doubt saved them, kept a barrier between them and the Echo. He stood up. Your brother discovered all this. He was getting close to exposing everything. And then, you think this Echo caused his accident? The idea was both horrifying and oddly comforting, that Michael's death wasn't random, that it meant something. I think he was a threat to it, just as you are now. Robert gestured to the materials spread around us. We need to take all of this somewhere safe. The Echo has limitations. It can't physically manifest except in very specific circumstances, but it has human agents, people it's partially possessed or influenced. Like who? Anyone who's had contact with it and survived is vulnerable, including me. His honesty was disarming. That's why I never work alone. Why I told you where I was staying, gave you my card. Transparency is protection. I considered his words, weighing them against the evidence in Michael's files. If Robert had wanted to harm me, he'd had plenty of opportunity already. What do we do now? I asked finally. We finish what your brother started, Robert said. We find a way to close the door that Nexus opened. He began gathering the materials. But first, we need to get somewhere safe. The Echo knows we're here. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed with another text. Unknown. Number. He's lying, Jamie. He killed me. He'll kill you too. Run. M. I showed Robert the message. His face paled. It's trying to isolate you, he said urgently. Once you're alone, vulnerable, that's when it strikes. He handed me the laptop and hard drive. We need to leave, now. As we stepped outside, the previously busy lake was eerily deserted. No families, no boats, just empty shoreline and still water. The air felt charged, heavy with something more than humidity. Don't look back, Robert murmured. Walk normally to your car. We had only taken a few steps when a familiar voice called my name. Jamie? I froze. It was Michael's voice, not over a phone, but right behind me, as clear as life. Don't turn around, Robert hissed. Whatever you do, don't turn around. But how could I not? How could anyone not turn when their dead brother calls their name? I turned. Michael stood there, looking exactly as he had the last time I saw him alive. Jeans, his favorite faded blue shirt, the watch I'd given him for his 30th birthday. He smiled, that crooked smile that always appeared in family photos. Hey, little brother, he said. Every instinct told me to run to him, to embrace him, to celebrate this impossible miracle. But Robert's warning rang in my ears, and the weight of Michael's own investigation in my hands kept me rooted in place. You're not him, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Michael's smile faltered. Of course it's me, Jamie. I've been trying to reach you, to warn you. He gestured to Robert. About him. About what he did. Robert stood rigid beside me. James, listen to me. That thing is not your brother. It's using his appearance, his memories, to get to you. Michael took a step forward and I instinctively stepped back. Jamie, he was part of the team that opened the door. He's trying to cover his tracks. The others are already dead. I'm the only one left who knows the truth. The conviction in his voice, the familiar way his left eyebrow arched when he was being serious, it was all so perfectly Michael that my resolve wavered. If you're really Michael, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, tell me something only he would know. A look of hurt crossed his face. Seriously? Okay. When you were 8, you fell from the treehouse and broke your arm. You made me promise not to tell Mom and Dad it happened because you were trying to fly using trash bags as wings. He took another step closer. Or how about the fact that you kissed Sarah at my 29th birthday party when you thought I wasn't looking, and you felt guilty about it ever since? My breath caught. I had never told anyone about that momentary, drunken lapse of judgment. The Echo has access to all his memories, Robert said urgently. It knows everything Michael knew. He's desperate, Michael countered. Listen to yourself, Jamie. Which is more likely, that I found a way to warn you from beyond death, or that there's some supernatural entity mimicking dead people? He extended his hand. Come with me. I'll explain everything. I looked between them. The brother I'd mourned for 5 years, and the stranger with a fantastic story backed by my brother's own research. The choice seemed impossible. Prove it, I said suddenly, an idea forming. Both of you. If that thing has access to Michael's memories, and if you're telling the truth, I nodded to Robert, then you both know what was in the box I found buried by his grave today. Michael's expression didn't change. The key to this shed, and my note telling you to trust no one until you saw for yourself. Robert looked confused. I don't know anything about a box or a key. I stared at Michael, a chill running through me despite the warm day. There was no note in the box, just the key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Michael's face changed, subtly at first, the smile becoming too wide, the eyes too bright. Clever, Jamie. Always the careful one. His voice remained Michael's, but something else layered beneath it now, something older, colder. But it doesn't matter. You've seen enough to believe, even if just a little. And that little bit of belief is all I need. The air around Michael's form seemed to waver, like heat rising from pavement. His outline blurred, features becoming less distinct. Run! Robert shouted, grabbing my arm. Now! We sprinted toward the parking lot, the laptop and hard drive clutched against my chest. Behind us, a sound rose. Not quite a voice, not quite a wind, but something between the two, calling my name in a distorted version of my brother's voice. We reached our cars, and Robert shouted over the growing wind, Follow! Me! Don't stop for anything! As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back. Where Michael had stood was now a churning darkness, a void in the shape of a man, moving toward us with unnatural speed. I threw myself into the driver's seat and started the engine. Robert's car peeled out ahead of me, and I followed, tires spitting gravel. In my rearview mirror, the darkness reached the edge of the parking lot and then stopped, as if hitting an invisible barrier. For miles, we drove in tense silence, my eyes constantly checking the mirror, expecting to see that darkness pursuing us. But the road behind remained clear, and gradually, the vice grip of fear around my chest loosened enough to let me breathe normally again. Robert led us to a small roadside motel, different from the one he'd mentioned earlier. We checked in under false names, paying cash, and secured a room at the far end of the building. Once inside, Robert immediately salted the doorway and windows, a detail that would have seemed absurd hours earlier, but now felt like sensible precaution. It can't physically pursue us beyond the places it has marked, he explained, drawing the curtains. The lake was one such place, significant to you and Michael, charged with emotional energy. It's strongest there. I set Michael's laptop on the small table and sank onto one of the twin beds. What was that thing? It looked like Michael, knew things only he would know. Robert sat opposite me. The echo exists in the space between life and death. We theorize that it's composed of fragments of consciousness, pieces of souls, if you will, that didn't move on. Over time, these fragments coalesced into something self-aware. He rubbed his eyes tiredly. At Nexus, we were researching consciousness as energy that might persist after death. We built a device to detect and amplify these energy patterns. And instead, you ripped open a door. Yes. The admission seemed to physically pain him. The echo came through, but it was weak at first, able to manifest only as electronic disturbances, voices on recordings. It learned quickly, feeding on the grief and longing of the researchers who'd lost loved ones. His face darkened. Elaine had died just months before I joined the project. My grief made me an ideal target. I opened the laptop, navigating to the files Michael had compiled. According to this, you filed complaints, tried to shut the project down. When I realized what was happening, yes. But by then, it was too late. The echo had already established footholds in our world, emotional anchors through the researchers it had influenced. He nodded to the computer. Does Michael mention Jenkins' death? I searched the files and found it. A news article about a suicide, a brilliant scientist who'd shot himself after claiming to be in communication with his dead son. The pattern was always the same, Robert continued. The echo would appear as a loved one, convince the person to perform a ritual it claimed would make the reunion permanent. In reality, the ritual created a stronger anchor for the echo in our world. A ritual like what? Different for each person, tailored to their beliefs and vulnerabilities. For some, it was a specific prayer or incantation. For others, a sacrifice, usually of blood, sometimes more. His voice became clinical, detached, as if the horror was easier to convey that way. The echo can't directly kill, it needs human agents or manipulation of circumstances. I thought of Michael's car accident. You think it caused my brother's crash? Or influenced someone else to cause it? Your brother was getting too close to the truth. Robert gestured to the laptop. He'd connected the deaths, recognized the pattern. He was a threat. I scrolled through more files, finding Michael's notes on each death connected to Nexus. If what you're saying is true, why has it started making these phone calls now? Why not right after the deaths? It's getting stronger, Robert said grimly. Each successful anchoring ritual increases its power and reach. The phone calls are new, a more sophisticated form of contact than it was capable of before. He leaned forward. But the calls serve the same purpose as its earlier manifestations, to lure people to emotionally significant locations where the veil is thinner and it can manifest physically. The weight of everything pressed down on me. My brother's secret investigation, his possible murder, this entity using his voice and face to reach me. It was too much, too impossible, and yet the evidence was right in front of me. How do we stop it? I asked finally. Robert's expression was grim. I've been trying to figure that out for 8 years. The original device that opened the door was destroyed when Nexus shut down. The researchers who designed it are dead. He nodded to the laptop. Your brother might have discovered something I missed. He was following leads I never found. I spent the next hours scouring Michael's files while Robert made calls to the other survivors on his list, warning them to stay vigilant. As night fell, exhaustion finally caught up with me, and I dozed off sitting against the headboard, the laptop still open beside me. I dreamed of Michael, not the twisted version from the lake, but my brother as he truly was. We were in our childhood home, sitting on the porch steps as we had countless summer evenings. You need to finish it, Jamie, he said, his voice gentle but urgent. What they started at Nexus, it has to end. I don't know how, I admitted. Michael pointed to the west. The answer's where it began. The door swings both ways. I woke with a start to find Robert shaking my shoulder. You were talking in your sleep, he said, concern etching his features. Outside, dawn was breaking. I rubbed my eyes, the dream still vivid. The original Nexus facility, I said, the realization hitting me. Is it still standing? Robert looked, surprised. Parts of it. It's abandoned now, out in the mountains about 3 hours from here. Why? I turned to the laptop, searching until I found what I was looking for, Michael's notes on the facility's location and layout. Because that's where this started. That's where it has to end. It's too dangerous, Robert protested. The echo is strongest there. It's the first anchor point. Which means it's also where it's most vulnerable, I countered, showing him Michael's final notes. Look, he found the original research, the theoretical framework for closing the breach. It requires being at the exact spot where the door was opened. Robert studied the notes, his expression shifting from skepticism to cautious hope. This might actually work, but it would require precise timing and someone willing to... He trailed off, reading further. No, absolutely not. There has to be another way. I had already read the passage he was concerned about. The theoretical reversal process required a living consciousness to act as a bridge, someone connected to both worlds through grief, who would essentially offer themselves as bait while the closing mechanism activated. It has to be me, I said quietly. I'm connected to Michael, who's connected to the echo. I'm the bridge. It's suicide, Robert said flatly. Even if the process works and the door closes, the person acting as the bridge would be pulled into whatever lies beyond. You'd be trapped there. Like Michael is now. The realization hurt, but also strengthened my resolve. He's not at peace. Parts of him are caught in that thing, being used to hurt others. I closed the laptop decisively. I have to try. Robert stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We'll need equipment, supplies, and we can't go alone. We need someone watching our backs in case the echo sends human agents. Who can we trust? There's one person, Robert said, reaching for his phone. Someone who lost as much as I did to this thing, but who still has the scientific background to help us rebuild the reversal device. He dialed a number. Dr. Eleanor Mercer. She was part of the original team, but left before things went wrong. Her daughter was one of the first victims after the breach. While Robert spoke with Dr. Mercer, I found myself drawn to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peer outside. The motel parking lot was empty except for our 2 cars and a delivery truck idling near the office. As I watched, a figure emerged from behind the truck, a woman in a simple dress, her dark hair pulled back in a familiar style. Even from this distance, I recognized her immediately. Sarah, Michael's fiancée. She stood perfectly still, staring directly at our room door, her face expressionless. Then slowly, she raised her hand and beckoned to me. I let the curtain fall back into place, my heart hammering. Robert, I said, my voice strained. It found us. We left the motel, through the bathroom window, abandoning our cars and most of our possessions. Robert had insisted we pack the essentials and go bags for exactly this scenario. The laptop, hard drive, some cash, basic supplies. Dr. Mercer would meet us at a predetermined location with the equipment we needed. As we hiked through the woods behind the motel, I couldn't shake the image of Sarah standing in that parking lot. She had moved on with her life after Michael's death, remarried last year according to mutual friends. She lived 3 states away now. There was no reason for her to be at that specific motel at dawn. No reason except the echo. It's escalating, Robert said as we emerged onto a rural road and began walking north. Using more human anchors, becoming more aggressive. It knows what we're planning. How? I asked, scanning the empty road for any sign of vehicles. The same way it knew to use Sarah's form to rattle you. It's connected to us through our grief, our connections to the dead. It can sense our intentions when they involve those connections. He adjusted his pack. Dr. Mercer should be about 2 miles up this road. She'll take us the rest of the way to Nexus. We walked in tense silence, every rustle in the underbrush making us freeze. The morning was unnaturally quiet. No birdsong, no distant traffic sounds, just the crunch of our footsteps on gravel. Tell me about the device, I said, needing conversation to distract from the growing sense of dread. How does it work? Robert seemed relieved to focus on the technical aspects. The original breakthrough at Nexus was the discovery that consciousness generates a unique energy signature that persists after death. The device they built could detect and amplify these signatures, essentially creating a receiver for communications from beyond. But instead, it opened a door. Yes, they underestimated the power they were channeling. The echo was drawn to the energy like a moth to flame. He glanced at me. The reversal theory suggests that by inverting the energy flow and providing a strong emotional anchor, You and your connection to Michael, we can essentially create a vacuum that pulls the echo back through the door. And me with it, I added quietly. Robert didn't deny it. The theory is untested. We don't know exactly what will happen. A battered pickup truck appeared around the bend ahead, slowing as it approached us. Behind the wheel was a woman in her 60s, her silver hair cut in a practical bob, her face lined with both age and grief. That's Eleanor, Robert confirmed as the truck stopped beside us. We can trust her completely. The echo took her daughter Emily. Dr. Eleanor Mercer was brisk and businesslike, her British accent clipped as she instructed us to get in quickly. Only her reddened eyes betrayed the emotional toll of our mission. I've got everything we need, she said, accelerating back onto the road. Components for the reversal device, protective measures for the site. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Robert explained your role. Are you certain about this? Yes, I said, more confidently than I felt. My brother's research led us here. I need to finish what he started. Eleanor nodded. Your brother was a brave man. He contacted me about a year before his death, asked all the right questions. I was too afraid to tell him everything then. Regret shadowed her face. Perhaps if I had, he'd still be alive. The drive to the Nexus facility took us deep into the mountains, following increasingly narrow and neglected roads. Finally, Eleanor turned onto what appeared to be a maintenance path, barely visible among the encroaching vegetation. The facility is just ahead, she said, stopping the truck. We'll go on foot from here, less chance of being detected. The abandoned research complex emerged from the forest like a concrete ghost, a series of low buildings surrounding a central structure with a distinctive domed roof. Nature had begun reclaiming the site, vines crawled up walls, and small trees had taken root in the cracked parking lot. The main laboratory was under the dome, Eleanor explained as we approached cautiously. That's where the breach occurred, where the echo first came through. We entered through a side door that Eleanor unlocked with a key she still possessed. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. Emergency lighting still functioned on backup power, casting eerie shadows down the corridors. The government shut down the facility but never completely decommissioned it, Eleanor said, leading us deeper into the complex. Too many classified materials, too much potential for public panic if the truth got out. The main laboratory was a circular room beneath the dome, filled with equipment draped in dust covers. At its center stood a raised platform surrounded by what looked like modified Tesla coils. This is where it happened, Robert said quietly. Where the door opened. Eleanor moved efficiently around the room, uncovering specific pieces of equipment and checking their condition. Most of this can still work with proper power. The reversal device will use components from the original array, but reconfigured to invert the energy flow. While they worked on the technical aspects, I explored the lab, drawn to a wall of photographs, the Nexus research team in happier days. I recognized Robert, younger and less haunted. Eleanor stood proudly beside a young woman who had her same determined eyes. Emily, I assumed. One photo made me stop cold. In the background, partially obscured but unmistakable, was Michael. He wasn't identified in the caption, wasn't posed with the team, but he was definitely there, observing. He was here, I said, my voice echoing in the large room. Michael was here before his investigation. Why? Eleanor and Robert exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. There's something you haven't told me, I said, anger rising. What is it? Eleanor sighed. Your brother wasn't just investigating Nexus as a journalist. He was here as a participant in one of our early studies, a study on twins and shared consciousness. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Twins? Michael wasn't a twin. Not identical twins, Eleanor clarified, but you and Michael shared a womb for the first 8 weeks of your mother's pregnancy. One embryo was absorbed, a phenomenon called vanishing twin syndrome. Most people never know it happened. I stared at her in disbelief. That's impossible. Our parents would have told us. They likely didn't know, Robert interjected. Without modern ultrasound technology, it often went undetected. But the connection remains on a quantum level, a shared consciousness signature that our instruments could detect. Michael discovered this during the study, Eleanor continued. He was fascinated by the implications, volunteered for additional tests. Then, When things started going wrong at Nexus, when people started dying, he connected the dots and began his investigation. I felt dizzy, overwhelmed by this new information. So I'm connected to the Echo not just through grief, but through this quantum link with Michael? Yes, Eleanor said, which makes you the perfect bridge for the reversal process. Your consciousness signature is already entangled with his, and his is now partially entangled with the Echo. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. That's why it's been able to reach me so effectively. Why it knew things only Michael would know. I looked between them. And why you think this plan might actually work? Robert nodded grimly. The reversal theory always required someone with a strong quantum entanglement to the other side. We just never had a candidate before you. I should have felt manipulated, used. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. This connection to Michael, even one I'd never known about, explained the uncanny bond we'd shared in life, the emptiness I'd felt since his death. It felt right somehow, that I would be the one to close this door. Let's do it, I said. Tell me what I need to do. For the next several hours, we worked to assemble the reversal device. Eleanor's expertise guided us, her hands still steady despite her age. Robert handled the power connections, jury-rigging the facility's backup generators to provide the massive energy surge we would need. As evening approached, the device was ready, a modified version of the original array, now surrounding a chair positioned at the center of the platform. The process is straightforward, Eleanor explained. You'll sit in the chair, we'll activate the device, creating an inverted energy field. Then you'll need to focus on Michael, not just memories, but the feeling of your connection to him. That focus will act as a beacon, drawing the Echo toward you. And when it comes, I asked, eyeing the chair that looked uncomfortably like an electric chair. The field will intensify, creating a vacuum effect. The Echo should be pulled back through the breach, closing it in the process. She hesitated. The theory suggests that anything strongly connected to the Echo will be pulled with it, including me. The unspoken conclusion hung in the air. There's no guarantee this will work, Robert warned, and no way to know what lies on the other side of that door. I understand the risks, I said more calmly than I felt. Let's proceed before the Echo realizes what we're doing and sends more human agents. As if summoned by my words, a distant crash echoed through the facility, the sound of a door being forced open. We've got company, Robert said grimly, pulling out a handgun I hadn't known he carried. Eleanor, start the power sequence. I'll hold them off as long as I can. No, Eleanor said firmly. I'll go. I know this facility better than either of you, and I can lead them away from the lab. Her eyes met mine. Finish this. For Emily, for Michael, for all of them. Before we could protest, she pressed a small device into Robert's hand, a remote trigger for the array, and slipped out the laboratory's side entrance. Robert and I worked frantically to complete the final preparations. The generators hummed to life, power flowing into the array. The Tesla coils began to emit a soft blue glow, illuminating the dusty lab in ethereal light. It's time, Robert said, checking the connections one last time. Once you're in position, I'll initiate the sequence. I moved to the chair, but hesitated before sitting. If this works, if the door closes for good, what will you do? A sad smile crossed his face. Find a way to live with what we did. Make amends however I can. He extended his hand. It's been an honor, James. Your brother would be proud. I shook his hand firmly, then sat in the chair. Metal restraints automatically closed around my wrists and ankles, a safety measure, Eleanor had explained, to prevent me from being physically pulled through before the process completed. Robert moved to the control panel. Focus on Michael, not the Echo's version, but your real brother, your connection to him. I closed my eyes, calling to mind not just Michael's face or voice, but the feeling of his presence, the sense of security I'd always felt with him, the unspoken understanding between us. Now I knew why that bond had felt so profound. We had literally shared existence, however briefly. The array hummed louder, the blue glow intensifying. The air in the laboratory seemed to thicken, pressure building like before a thunderstorm. Distantly, I heard shouting, running footsteps. Eleanor's diversion hadn't worked for long. They're coming, Robert said urgently. I'm activating the final sequence now. Whatever happens, maintain your focus on Michael. The array surged with power, the blue light becoming blinding even through my closed eyelids. The pressure in the room increased until my ears popped painfully. And then I heard it. Michael's voice. Not from a phone or from across a lake, but inside my own mind. Jamie, I'm here. My eyes flew open. The laboratory had vanished. I was suspended in a space of swirling blue-gray mist, the chair and restraints still holding me in place, but now seemingly floating in nothingness. Before me stood Michael, the real Michael, his eyes clear and sad and so familiar it made my heart ache. "You found a way," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "I knew you would." "Mike," I whispered, "is it really you this time?" He nodded, moving closer but stopping just out of reach. Parts of me. What's left after the echo fed on my consciousness. His form wavered slightly, like a television with poor reception. "You shouldn't have come, Jamie. There's no way back for you now." "I know," I said. But there was no other way to close the door. Michael looked around at the swirling mist. "The echo is coming. It knows what you're trying to do." His expression became urgent. "Listen carefully. When it arrives, it will try to break your focus, make you doubt, make you fear. Don't let it. The reversal only works if your intention remains pure." "What happens to you when the door closes?" I asked, dreading the answer. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I finally rest. Maybe I go somewhere else." A sad smile crossed his face. "Maybe we both find out together." The mist around us darkened, swirling faster. A wind that wasn't really wind began to howl, carrying whispers in 1,000 voices. "It's here," Michael said, his form becoming more transparent. "Remember who you are, Jamie. Remember who I am." The mist coalesced, forming shapes that constantly shifted, faces I recognized and many I didn't, all contorted in expressions of hunger and rage. The whispers became louder, more distinct. "James," my name in my mother's voice. "James," my father's voice now. "James," Sarah's voice, then Robert's, then Eleanor's. The shifting mass of faces and voices surrounded me, pressing closer. Through it all, I could still see Michael, now barely visible, his hand outstretched toward me, but never quite reaching. "This isn't real," I said aloud, forcing myself to focus on Michael's fading form. "You're not them, you're the echo." The voices changed, becoming a single voice that was both ancient and new, both singular and legion. "We are all of them, James. All who have died, all who were not ready to go. We offer continuation. We offer reunion." The restraints around my wrists and ankles suddenly felt looser. The mist formed tendrils that caressed my face with the gentleness of a lover. "Let go," the echo whispered. "Release your intention. Stay with Michael, with all of them, forever." It was tempting, so tempting to surrender, to stop fighting, to believe the lie that I could have my brother back. Part of me wanted to give in, to accept whatever false eternity the echo offered, if it meant not losing Michael again. But through the swirling darkness, I could still see him, the real Michael, his form now little more than a glimmer of light. And I remembered his words. "The reversal only works if your intention remains pure." "No," I said, my voice strengthening. "This isn't what Michael wants. This isn't what any of them want. You're not continuation, you're stagnation. You're not reunion, you're consumption." The mist recoiled as if struck, the voices howling in anger. The restraints tightened painfully around my limbs. "You cannot close the door," the echo raged. "You are already here, already part of us. Your consciousness is our anchor now." "You're right," I said, an understanding dawning that seemed to come from beyond myself. "I am your anchor, but anchors can be raised as well as dropped." I closed my eyes, focusing entirely on Michael, not just my memories or feelings about him, but the quantum connection Eleanor had described, the shared consciousness that had begun before birth and continued beyond death. In my mind, I visualized that connection as a golden thread stretching between us, pulsing with light. Then, with all my will, I imagined pulling on that thread, drawing not just Michael, but everything connected to him back toward the door. The howling intensified. The pressure became unbearable, as if my body was being compressed from all sides. Through it all, I held on to that image of the golden thread, pulling, gathering, reclaiming. Jamie. Michael's voice, clearer now despite the chaos. It's working. Don't stop. The mist began to swirl in a new pattern, forming a vortex centered on me. The faces and voices were being pulled into it, stretched and distorted as they fought against the pull. The chair beneath me shuddered violently. Let go, I whispered to Michael, understanding now what needed to happen. Let go of this place. Come with me. His form solidified slightly, his expression a mixture of fear and hope. Where? I don't know, I admitted. But wherever it is, we go together, like we always have. Michael's hand finally reached mine, his touch cold but real. The moment our fingers interlaced, the vortex accelerated, the howling rising to a deafening pitch. The golden thread in my mind blazed like a supernova. And then, silence. Complete and absolute. For a moment that might have been eternity, there was nothing, no sensation, no thought, no existence. Then, gradually, awareness returned. I was lying on my back, staring up at the domed ceiling of the Nexus laboratory. The restraints were open, the chair empty beneath me. The array was dark, the generators silent. Robert knelt beside me, his face a mask of disbelief. James? Can you hear me? I sat up slowly, every muscle aching as if I'd run a marathon. Did it work? I think so. He helped me to my feet. The array overloaded, the power surged, and then everything just stopped. The people who broke in, they just collapsed, like puppets with cut strings. He studied my face. What happened on the other side? I tried to articulate the experience, but words seemed inadequate. The echo. I think it's gone, pulled back through the door. I looked around the laboratory, suddenly anxious. Where's Eleanor? Robert's expression fell. She didn't make it. They got to her before she could lead them away. Grief washed over me, another life lost to the echo. And Michael? I don't know, Robert admitted. Did you see him there? I nodded, the memory already becoming hazy, dreamlike. He helped me. At the end, he came with me. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling something there that was difficult to describe. Not Michael's presence exactly, but a sense of completion, as if a missing piece had been returned. We made our way out of the facility in silence, both processing what had happened. Outside, dawn was breaking, the mountain air fresh and cool after the stale atmosphere of the laboratory. What now? I asked as we reached Eleanor's truck, still parked where we'd left it. Robert looked back at the facility, then at the rising sun. We make sure this never happens again. We destroy the research, dismantle what's left of the equipment. He placed a hand on my shoulder. And we honor those who were lost by living well. I nodded, thinking of Michael, of Eleanor, of all the others who had been caught in the echo's web. I'd like that. As we drove away from Nexus, I felt a weight lifting. Not just the immediate danger of the echo, but the crushing grief I'd carried since Michael's death. It wasn't gone completely. I still missed him, still mourned him. But the sharp edges had softened, the void filled with something like peace. That night, as I lay in a motel bed watching the ceiling fan turn lazy circles, I thought I heard Michael's voice one last time, not from a phone or from the mist, but from within my own mind, a final echo that felt right and true. Goodbye, Jamie, until we meet again. 5 years have passed since the events at Nexus. Robert and I still meet occasionally, checking in, making sure the door remains closed. So far, there have been no more calls from the dead, no more manifestations of the echo. I visit Michael's grave regularly now, no longer afraid of the pain it might bring. I tell him about my life, how I've started writing, sharing stories that help people process grief and loss without revealing the impossible truth behind my insights. How I've found love again, a relationship that Michael would have heartily approved of. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still feel that sense of completion, of connection that transcends death. Not Michael's ghost or the echo's deception, but something more fundamental, the quantum entanglement that began before birth and continues beyond life. Scientists say that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed. I believe the same is true of consciousness, of the bonds between people who love each other. The door between worlds is closed, but the connections remain, not as pathways for entities like the echo to exploit, but as the invisible threads that bind us to those we've lost. Today, as I stand by the lake where this all began, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson, I feel at peace. The shed has been cleared out, Michael's research secured in a place only Robert and I know about. The boat dock has been rebuilt, and sometimes I fish there, continuing the tradition we started so long ago. My phone rings, and for a brief moment, old fears resurface. But the caller ID shows my fiancé's name, not a ghost from the past. "Hey," I answer, smiling. "Just watching the sunset. I'll be home soon." As I end the call and pocket my phone, I glance once more across the lake. For a moment, just a moment, I think I see a figure on the opposite shore, raising a hand in farewell. By the time I blink, it's gone, if it was ever there at all. Some might call it a hallucination, a trick of the light, or the lingering trauma of what I experienced. But I prefer to think of it as a reminder that the line between life and death, between presence and absence, is thinner than we imagine. Not in the dangerous way the echo exploited, but in the comforting knowledge that those we've loved and lost are never truly gone. They live on in the quantum entanglement of shared consciousness, in the stories we tell, in the lives we lead because of their influence. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, we can almost feel them beside us, not calling from beyond a broken door, but walking alongside us on the journey we all share. My brother was buried long ago, but in all the ways that truly matter, he never left.